So it shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone that both Sony and Microsoft are working their asses off behind closed doors to be the first one dropping the upcoming next generation console. Now, I've been following the news/leaks very closely as I'm very eager to test them out for you guys as soon as they drop on the market. And so with that said, if you're interested in PlayStation 5 or Xbox 2 and everything around them, make sure to follow or subscribe to the channel as I'm going to do lots of interesting videos as soon as I'm getting my sloppy hands on them. Anyway, we got some very interesting news/leaks. It seems like we are maybe looking at final CPU specs for an upcoming possible PS5 or Xbox 2 CPU. So first and foremost, let's kick the video off by some interesting news coming from Mike Cerny, the lead architect of PlayStation 4 and system architect at Sony, which recently did an exclusive interview on Wired sharing lots of interesting news. PS5 will be backward compatible, we will get support for ray tracing, and we're also getting a super fast SSD to help get even faster load times. To demonstrate this, they did a so-called fast travel in Spider-Man. This usually takes about 15 seconds or so on the PS4 Pro. On the PS5 dev kit, it took under 1 second, more specifically 0.8 seconds. Furthermore, PS5 will support 8K graphics, but the article isn't going much deeper than that. Sony is also doubling down on better sound with PS5, and AMD is making this happen by adding a custom unit for 3D audio that Cerny thinks will redefine what sound can do in a video game. In terms of graphics, it's now been confirmed that PS5 as well as Xbox 2 will be fitted with a custom-made navi, again powerful enough for 8K graphics and ray tracing. Now, what about release date then? Well, we don't have an exact date yet, but it's coming out in 2020, so Microsoft could technically be first here if they decide to drop Xbox 2 this year. But yeah, let's talk about the CPU for a moment. So to get a better understanding what these numbers mean, let's take a look at current gen, and more specifically let's look at PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X CPU. Now, as you can see on this picture I made here, based on the informations and leaks that we got, this is what the next gen in terms of clock speeds and such might look like. Now, from the leaks and rumors up until this point, it seems like we're going to stay on 8 cores on next generation as well, but what's more interesting is the much higher clock speed and additional memory, which should give the PS5 and the Xbox 2 the necessary oomph to actually reach 4K at 60 FPS. And yeah, true 4K at 60 FPS, I should add. Now, as for the current gen, both the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X uses an 8-core CPU from AMD from the Jaguar architecture, where the difference is that the PS4 Pro is clocked slightly slower at 2.1 GHz and the Xbox One X is clocked at 2.3, but still, it is the same kind of CPU. Leaks are now coming in what it looks to be the possible CPU for either the PS5 or the Xbox 2, but again, if we take a look at the current generation right now, it could just be the one single CPU that is going to be used in both Xbox and PlayStation. So anyway, the leak from this unknown AMD CPU, we do believe is going to be the next Xbox and PlayStation will be staying at 8-core again, but this time it will be based on the upcoming Zen 2 7nm architecture, which should translate into a lot faster clock speeds and a lot better efficiency, and thus lower temperatures and better performance. The new CPU will be clocked at, are you sitting down, 3.2 GHz. But how can we be so sure about that? Well, that is a very good question. To answer it, we're gonna have to dive a bit deeper here. So in the beginning of the year, the almighty leaker Tom_Apisac tweeted about this unknown chipset made by AMD that we never heard about before. I did, however, mention it in one of my other videos regarding PS5 and Xbox 2 a few weeks ago. Anyway, the chipset is known as AMD Gonzalo, and what's so special about this, you may ask? Well, it seems like this CPU looks to be what the next gen Xbox and PS5 will be fitted with. So the leak is just a boring string of characters and numbers, but if you have something like this, how to decode AMD code names in front of your screen, you can actually translate the whole string to something that makes some sort of sense. So if you're fancy enough and you want to try and translate this yourself, simply just just follow the instructions on the screen dump and you will figure this out. Anyway, this is what it means. We're gonna do this together. So I'm gonna show you guys how you can translate this. It's very interesting as it unveils what this CPU is all about. Now, the first said in the string means that the CPU is a qualification sample and that it's not final specs, which is very common at this stage. The next letter tells what segment the chipset belongs to, D for desktop, M for mobile, and S for server, etc. The letter G, however, is not listed on the screen dump, but we do believe that the G letter means gaming and that it is correlated with consoles. Now, the following string of numbers usually indicate clock frequency, model, and number of chiplets. If we take a look at our line of numbers here, it reveals that the processor has a base frequency of 1.6. Next up comes 2A, and this has to do with TDP and power draw, and the letter E should be the socket. Now, since both 2A and E are completely new, there is still no explanation what they mean. Now, after the letter E comes number 8, which tells us how many cores the CPU has, so 8 cores in total, and most leaks are pointing towards a Zen 2 processor based on the latest 7nm processor that AMD is preparing on the market right now. And as a side note, guys, AMD is planning on dropping at least 3 processors right off the Computex in Taipei on May 28th. And so if you're wondering if it's a great time to upgrade your PC or not, it might be wise to wait a bit. I actually made a whole video talking about possible CPUs AMD will be dropping. I linked that video up down below for you guys. Anyway, what's following 8 is the letter J, which shows the total cache. This J number is also all new and there is no explanation to this right now and we don't know what it means really. Next up comes B2, which indicates that this is a new revision of the chipset, and so that means that this processor, this unknown processor, is more closer to a final product, if you like. Alright, so after that, what's coming next is pretty interesting. The following numbers tells the turbo frequency, which is 32, which means that we got a 3.2 GHz turbo frequency, and the numbers that comes right after this says 10, which is a bit confusing and a little bit odd because the following numbers after the turbo number should usually be the base frequency, and so this 10 number would then technically mean 1 GHz, but we already revealed a 1.6 GHz base clock earlier, so this is a bit confusing and we haven't really figured out what this means yet. And what's following that is the integrated graphics and the frequency. We find 18 here, which indicates that the iGPU will have a frequency of 1.8 GHz. And yeah, that's it. Now, the numbers that we got already is what the rumors are pointing towards, so you should take all of this with a grain of salt. But let's take a look at the comparison picture once more. The current gen consoles has AMD processors known as Jaguar, we know that, which is a 28nm architecture. This architecture was pretty alright for gamers once it launched, but it's been clear that these CPUs has been a bottlenecking factors for developers lately, where 4K at 60 FPS haven't been a possibility. Now, what the rumors are pointing towards is that AMD, or should I say Sony and Microsoft, will now be using the brand new 7nm Zen 2 architecture instead, which shouldn't just give us a lot faster CPU at the same frequency as the older one, it should also be able to clock a lot higher, which we're able to see on this picture here. If 3.2 GHz turn out to be true, I have a strong feeling that the next generation consoles might be powerful enough to handle 4K at 60 FPS. Now, if you're wondering what graphics the next generation will carry, definitely have a look at my PlayStation 5 video where I provide you guys with all the details and leaks that we got right now and how I came up with these numbers. Now, what consoles are you going to pick up, PlayStation 5 or Xbox 2, or perhaps maybe both? Let me know in the comments. That being said, leaks should be taken with a grain of salt, we know that, so with that said, when can we expect to hear more about PS5 and Xbox 2? Now regarding PS5, again, I highly recommend taking a look at my PlayStation 5 video where I go through every possible release frame, but since Sony is ditching this year's E3, we should see Sony throw some form of exclusive event somewhere where they're going to announce the PlayStation 5. Rumors has it that Sony is possibly going to announce the PS5 the way that they did on the PS4, and that happened in the PlayStation meeting event held in New York in 2013. Now, as for the next generation Xbox, Microsoft have already told the press that they are going full force E3 this year, and so there's no doubt that we're going to see the first signs of Xbox 2 in June 2019 on E3 in Los Angeles. Anyway, I'm gonna be back guys with a brand new video in just a day or two. Until then, have an awesome day, right?